She raised her glass and said, "To my only daughter." And everyone clapped except me. My name is Nora Hale. I'm 34 years old, a marketing consultant, sitting at an upscale Seattle restaurant during my mother's lavish birthday dinner. Elaine toasts her only daughter, publicly erasing Nora in front of friends and family. The camera flashes. Laughter echoes. Nora hides her pain behind her wine glass. Across the room, the waiter, Daniel Reed, locks eyes with her, visibly startled. When he returns with dessert, he discreetly places a folded napkin beside her plate. On it, "You need to know the truth about your father." Nora freezes, because she never told anyone her father was dead. And that's when I realized, someone here knew more about my life than my own mother ever did. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments. Where would you have walked away, and where would you have fought back? And don't forget to subscribe, because your own comeback story deserves to be heard. It's strange how humiliation sounds. It's quiet, polite, and always smiling. The restaurant glowed in soft amber light, the kind that makes everything look more beautiful than it really is. My mother sat at the head of the table, a vision of elegance and control. Elaine Hale, 62, immaculately dressed, every pearl perfectly placed. She ruled the room without trying. People leaned in when she spoke. They laughed when she wanted them to. I sat 3 seats down, invisible as always, pretending the champagne in my glass was confidence. Across from me, my younger sister Chloe shimmered in silver, the kind of sparkle that demands attention. Cameras flashed. Guests gushed over her new influencer deal. Mom smiled like the world finally made sense. Then it happened. Mom lifted her glass, the diamond on her wrist catching the light. "To my only daughter," she said smoothly, smiling at Chloe. My pride. My joy. The table erupted in applause. Someone shouted, "Speech!" I smiled too, the kind that hides the crack in your soul. My chest felt tight, but my face stayed still. I'd learned long ago that breaking down in front of my mother was like bleeding in front of a shark. Chloe stood, glowing under the attention. "Thank you, Mom," she said, her voice soft, polished, rehearsed. She hugged Elaine's shoulders like a well-framed photograph, mother and daughter, perfection for the cameras. I watched them, pretending to fix my napkin, pretending not to notice my name never came up. Inside, something twisted, not jealousy, not anger, just emptiness, the kind that grows when you realize you've been erased politely. The waiter came by to refill my glass. Tall, dark hair, quiet face. His name tag read Daniel. When he leaned closer, I caught a faint smell of cologne and something else. Hesitation. "Hale?" he said under his breath. I looked up. "Yes?" For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Then he looked down, finishing the pour too fast, almost spilling. He walked away quickly, but I saw him glance back at me twice. I tried to focus on the noise, the laughter, the stories, Chloe's voice dancing through her achievements. But Daniel's look lingered in my mind. I didn't know why, but it felt like he knew me, not the version sitting at this table, but the one buried beneath the silence. Dessert came, gold-leafed cake, laughter, a toast for the cameras. When I reached for my fork, I noticed a folded napkin placed near my plate. Not mine, not the restaurant's design. It was handwritten, familiar handwriting, my father's. I unfolded it under the table, heart pounding. 5 words. Nothing more. "Ask about Hale Legacy Trust." My breath caught. My father had been gone for even years. No one had ever mentioned a trust. Not Mom, not Chloe, no one. I looked up to find Daniel across the room, his eyes locked on mine. Somewhere between the laughter and the lies, a stranger had just handed me the first crack in my family's perfect glass. Grief doesn't age. It just changes handwriting. I sat on the edge of my bed, the napkin unfolded in my lap like a ghost that refused to fade. The ink was slightly smudged, the same way my father's notes used to be. Rushed, uneven, always written with too much heart and not enough time. Ask about Hale Legacy Trust. I must have read those words 50 times. They didn't change, but their weight did. Every time I looked, it felt heavier, like it carried the truth I wasn't supposed to touch. Beside the main line, barely visible under the restaurant's candlelight smudge, was a string of faded numbers. A partial bank account. My breath caught. I turned on my laptop, fingers trembling as I typed the numbers into the search bar of the bank's site. No results. I tried again. Then a suggestion popped up. Did you mean Hale Holdings' private client account? I clicked. The page loaded slower than my heartbeat. Then it appeared, an account linked to my father's name. Active. 7 years after he died. My throat tightened. I whispered to the empty room. Dad? What did you do? The balance line was locked behind security access, but the word active burned like fire on the screen. Someone had been keeping it alive. I called the bank. My voice came out steady, but my pulse was chaotic. Hi, this is Nora Hale. I believe my late father, Thomas Hale, had an account under Hale Holdings. I'd like to confirm its current status. There was a long pause. The woman on the line spoke carefully, the way people do when they're reading something they wish they hadn't. Ma'am, that account was recently frozen. Frozen? Why? Because access was attempted by another authorized party. My stomach dropped. Who? Her voice lowered, cautious. According to our record, Elaine Hale. My mother. I sat in silence, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the hum of the line like it was the sound of my entire life unraveling. Is there a way to see when she accessed it? I asked quietly. 1 moment. Papers shuffled, keys clicked. Yes, the freeze was placed 6 months ago by Mrs. Hale herself. The system notes say, Family Dispute Prevention. Family Dispute Prevention. The irony nearly made me laugh. I thanked her, ended the call, and sat there, staring at the glowing screen. My hands were cold, my face numb. All those years, Emmott pretended there was nothing left after Dad's death. The debts, the downsizing, the way she said he'd left us with nothing but memories. But she knew. She'd known all this time. I whispered it out loud, my voice barely audible. She knew. All this time. The walls of the house seemed to shift with the echo. Outside, the city lights blurred through my tears, and somewhere deep inside the ache of missing him, something else started to stir, something sharper than grief. The soil remembered more than the people did. The road to Hale Vineyard hadn't changed. Same dusty stretch of oaks, same winding path lined with wild lavender that used to make my dad smile. He called it the scent of peace. Now, the sign at the gate didn't say Hale Vineyard. It said Chloe Reserve, a legacy of elegance. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. The words felt like theft. Not just of land, but of memory. The gravel crunched under my tires as I drove through the open gates. Workers I didn't recognize were pruning vines in perfect rows. I used to run through those rows as a child, barefoot, chasing my dad's laughter between the vines. Now the laughter was gone. And in its place, silence and branding. A woman in a tan apron looked up as I parked. Can I help you? I forced a polite smile. I'm Nora Hale. My father owned this vineyard. Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed by a cautious pause. Oh, you're that Hale. That one, I said softly. When did this play some change? About 5 years ago, she said. New ownership, new name. Mrs. Hale handled it personally. Of course she did. I walked toward the old farmhouse that used to be my father's office. The door creaked just like it used to. Inside, the air smelled like dust, cork, and ghosts. The walls that once held family photos now displayed Chloe's branding, her face in a marketing poster, holding a wine glass with a fake laugh. The tagline read, "A daughter's dream." My throat burned. One of the older workers, gray-haired with kind eyes, stepped in behind me. Miss Nora? I turned. You knew my father, didn't you? He nodded. Henry Hale was a good man, honest. We miss him. Tell me something, I said quietly. Did he ever agree to sell this place? The man hesitated, eyes flicking toward the door before leaning in. No, ma'am. He talked about preserving it for family, said this land carried our name and our story. But after he passed, Mrs. Hale came with papers, said he signed them before the stroke. My heart stilled. Did you see the papers? He nodded. I saw them. But those signatures didn't look right. I've seen Mr. Hale sign hundreds of things over 20 years. That wasn't his hand. The room spun for a moment. I gripped the edge of the desk, my father's old desk, and steadied myself. Do you still have any of his old files? I asked. The man scratched his chin. There's a storage unit out back. We never cleared it. Mrs. Hale said she'd handle it, but she never came. We walked to the back office, the one with the small window facing the vineyard. Inside, cobwebs framed boxes marked archive in fading ink. He opened one, pulling out a small sealed container, metal, with my father's initials engraved on top. H.H. There was a label taped to the lid, yellowed but legible. For Nora Confidential. My chest tightened. My name. I brushed away the dust with trembling fingers. For Nora, I whispered. Whatever truth my father had buried was waiting for me right here, in a box my mother had made disappear. Some people serve food, others serve truth. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and late confessions. It was nothing like the glittering restaurant where I'd met Daniel the first time. No crystal glasses, no chandeliers, no lies wrapped in laughter, just fluorescent lights and the hum of an old ceiling fan. He was already there when I walked in, sitting at a corner booth, eyes scanning the window like he was waiting for a ghost. "Thanks for coming," he said when I slid into the seat across from him. His voice was lower now, cautious. "I didn't have much of a choice," I replied, pulling the napkin from my purse. "You wrote this. You knew my father. You need to tell me why." He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I worked for Henry Hale," he said quietly. "I was his assistant. Started at the vineyard when I was 19. I used to file contracts, handle his calls, and drive him to meetings." My heartbeat stumbled. "And my mother? Did you know her too?" His jaw tightened. "Too well." He stirred his coffee, eyes far away. "The day your father died, I was there, outside Mr. Benton's law office. I was supposed to pick him up. Instead, your mother showed up. She went inside with Mr. Benton, and I heard shouting through the wall." "What kind of shouting?" She said, "Don't you dare mention the trust to anyone, especially her." "Her, me," I froze. "You're saying she knew about the Hale Legacy Trust?" Daniel nodded, knew it, controlled it, and made sure you'd never find out. I swallowed hard, anger rising like static in my chest. "Why would she do that?" "Power," he said simply. "And money. Henry set up that trust to secure your inheritance. A safety net, in case something happened to him. But when he died, she convinced Benton to seal it until you were ready." I laughed bitterly. "Ready?" She meant erased. Daniel looked at me for a long time. Henry knew this might happen. That's why he left something behind. My pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "A video message. He recorded it the week before his stroke. I know, because I helped him set up the camera. He told me if anything happened, anything to make sure it ended up in the right hands." I blinked, trying to process. "And where is it now?" "Mr. Benton," he said. "The family lawyer. Henry trusted him to hold it until you came looking." My mind raced. Mr. Benton had been at the funeral. My mother had hugged him like an old friend. How long had he kept this secret? Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out a small USB drive. Silver, unmarked. "I made a copy," he said quietly. "It's time you watch what he left." He slid it across the table. Our fingers brushed for half a second, cold, trembling, real. I stared at the drive, the weight of years pressing on something small enough to fit in my palm. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. Daniel gave a faint, sad smile. "Because Henry saved my life once. And because some debts aren't paid in money." Outside, rain began to fall against the window, slow and deliberate like the world itself was waiting for what came next. I looked at the USB drive, then at Daniel. If my father had one last message, it was finally coming home. His voice broke through the static and through me. The room was dark except for the faint glow of my laptop screen. The USB drive clicked softly as it connected, a tiny sound that carried the weight of everything I'd ever wanted to forget. For a moment, the screen stayed black. Then a flicker, a hum of static, and there he was. My father, Henry Hale, alive again in pixels and memory. His face was thinner than I remembered, his eyes tired but kind. The background was his old office, the one my mother sold after his death. The shelves were lined with books, the clock behind him frozen at 9:17. He took a breath, then spoke. "Nora, if you're watching this, it means I couldn't stop what I feared most." I covered my mouth, my breath shaking. "I tried to make things right," he continued, voice breaking around the edges. "I built something to protect you, to make sure you were never left behind. But your mother, she doesn't see fairness the way I do. She sees a threat." He looked down for a moment like the floor held his guilt. "I love your mother, but she's dangerous when she feels cornered. I should have told you sooner. I should have prepared you." My throat tightened. He looked older than I remembered, but his words felt freshly cut. I've set up something called the Hale Legacy Trust, he said carefully. It's under your name, though she doesn't know the full extent. If she finds out, she'll do everything to bury it. My pulse quickened. The napkin, the call, the vineyard. It all lined up like dominoes falling. He hesitated, his hand shaking as he reached for something off-screen. When it came back into frame, I froze. A gold ring. His wedding band, the same one my mother claimed she'd pawned to cover funeral costs. He turned it slowly between his fingers. If she says I sold it, she's lying. I kept it because it meant hope could still be repaired. But if you're hearing this, then maybe it couldn't. The camera flickered, and his voice grew fainter. Nora, I know you'll find the truth. You always do. Follow the paper trail. Trust your instincts, not their apologies. He looked straight into the camera, then not just at it, but through it. Through time, through loss, straight into me. And Nora, he said softly, if you're watching this, they already lied. The screen froze on his face, the frame catching a tear he didn't have time to wipe away. For a moment I sat there, silent, still, hollow. The only sound was the laptop fan, and the echo of his last words repeating in my mind. They already lied. My heart didn't break this time. It hardened. Guilt has a smell. It's somewhere between fear and old paper. Mr. Benton's law office hadn't changed in years. Same dark mahogany walls, same clock ticking too loudly, same smell of leather and coffee that had gone stale in the corners. But something else lingered today. A tension that felt alive. He stood behind his desk when I entered, straightening his tie as if that could tidy up a guilty conscience. Nora, he said, forcing a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. You look well. I sat across from him, placing the USB drive on the polished wood between us like a loaded weapon. I just watched my father's message. His hand froze mid-air. He said if I was watching it, it meant people lied to me. I continued quietly. You were one of them, weren't you? Benton sighed, shoulders sinking under the weight of years he'd tried to bury. Nora, you don't understand how complicated this was. Then make me understand, I said. He walked to the window, his reflection trembling in the glass. Your mother came to me after Henry's death. She was? He paused, choosing his words carefully. Persuasive. You mean threatening? He didn't deny it. She said she wanted to protect family unity. She insisted Henry's estate be handled privately without you involved. My voice cracked like glass. Without me? His daughter? Benton turned back toward me, regret carved deep into his face. She told me you'd been estranged. That, including you, would only create conflict. And when I refused, she brought a document. A statement with your signature on it, waiving your rights to any inheritance. I felt my blood run cold. My signature? I never signed anything. I know, he said softly. I forged it. Under pressure. The room tilted slightly. My voice came out as a whisper. You forged my name. He nodded once. Elaine threatened to ruin my firm. To expose private dealings that would have cost me everything. I told myself I was protecting my career, but I knew what I was really doing. I gripped the arm of the chair, trying to steady my breathing. And the real will? He opened a drawer slowly and pulled out a folder sealed in wax. My father's name, Henry Hale, was written across it in his handwriting. I've kept this hidden since the day your mother took over, he said. Henry's true will, the one your mother never wanted you to see. My fingers trembled as I opened it. The first page was brief, direct, like him. I leave 50% of my total estate, including all properties, company holdings, and trust assets, to my daughter, Nora Hale. Tears blurred the text. All the years of silence, the coldness, the erasure, it had never been his intention. He'd loved me enough to make it equal. Why now? I asked, voice barely steady. Why tell me this after all these years? Benton exhaled, his face as pale as the papers between us. Because Daniel came to see me. Said you found the video. I knew it was only a matter of time before you uncovered everything. I stood, gathering the will with both hands. Then I'll make it right. He looked at me, something like fear creeping into his tone. Be careful, Nora. You don't know your mother the way I do. I know enough. He stepped closer, voice lowering to a tremor. If you expose this, she'll destroy you first. I met his eyes and gave the faintest smile, not of peace but of resolve. Then I guess it's time she learns I'm not that easy to erase. This time I wasn't there to eat. I was there to serve justice. The same restaurant, the same table, the same scent of expensive perfume, soft jazz, and hypocrisy. But this time, I wasn't the forgotten daughter quietly sipping champagne in the corner. I was the storm. I arrived early, asked the manager for a private projector setup. I said it was for a family tribute. He smiled politely. If only he knew. When Elaine and Chloe walked in, the air changed. Elaine, in her usual designer armchair, emerald silk, pearls that gleamed like trophies. Chloe was right behind her, glued to her phone, basking in invisible attention. "Nora," my mother said, smiling like a politician. "This is a surprise. I didn't think you wanted to see us again." I smiled back, calm and deliberate. "I just thought we could start over, clear the air." Elaine's eyes narrowed slightly, suspicion under sugar. "How thoughtful of you." "We ordered wine." We laughed at nothing. Chloe talked about her brand deal. Elaine corrected my posture twice. Everything was perfectly normal until I lifted my glass and said softly, "To Dad." Elaine froze for half a second. Chloe blinked. "Mom, what's wrong?" Before she could answer, the lights dimmed. The restaurant wall behind me flickered to life. And then his voice. Henry Hale's voice filled the room. "Nora, if you're watching this, it means I couldn't stop what I feared most." Gasps echoed around the tables. Elaine turned white. Chloe stared in confusion. The projection showed him sitting in his office, the same clip I'd watched in the dark. The same tired, gentle eyes. "I built something to protect you," he said. "But your mother, she'll hide it." Elaine stood, her chair scraping violently against the marble. "Turn that off," she snapped, her voice cracking. But I didn't move. She marched toward the waiter at the controls, but the video kept playing. "If she says I sold my ring," Henry continued, "she's lying." I kept it. Dozens of eyes turned to her hand, bare, trembling. The whispers began. "Is that her husband? She lied about the inheritance? What did he mean by hide it?" Chloe stared at her mother, realization dawning like fire spreading through dry leaves. "Mom, what is this?" Elaine tried to smile, but her face betrayed her. "This is manipulation. Nora is trying to destroy this family." I stood slowly, voice calm but cutting. "No, Mom, I'm just showing everyone the truth you buried." Henry's final words echoed through the room. "If you're watching this, Nora, they already lied." The video ended. Silence filled the restaurant. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Elaine's hands shook. The waiter looked terrified to breathe. Chloe couldn't look at her mother. Finally, Elaine slammed her palm on the table, shattering a glass. "You think anyone will believe you?" she hissed, her face contorted with rage. I met her gaze, unflinching. They just did. Sometimes justice needs an audience and a microphone. The restaurant had gone silent, the kind of silence that follows a lightning strike. Glass shards glimmered on the table, Elaine's hand still trembling above them. Her mask had cracked in public, and this time, there was no fixing it. Then, from behind the counter, I saw Daniel. Phone raised. Recording. He'd been there the whole time, serving, watching, waiting. Elaine noticed him too. "You!" she snapped. "Stop recording this right now." But he didn't move. He stepped forward, steady, calm. "The world deserves to hear what Mr. Hale said," he said clearly, his voice carrying across the room. Chloe jumped up, her voice shrill with panic. "Give me that phone." The moment her hand reached out, Daniel stepped back, hitting record again. "Go ahead," he said evenly. "Show them how far you'll go to silence the truth." The diners had their phones out now, too. Cameras flashing, conversations whispering like wildfire. Elaine's voice shook with fury. "You think anyone will believe this? A waiter and a bitter girl? Pathetic." I took a deep breath, letting the words roll off me like smoke. "They don't have to believe me," I said softly. "They just have to listen." Daniel turned his camera toward the wall, replaying the clip he'd caught. Henry's face on the projector. Elaine screaming to turn it off. Chloe lunging for his phone. The chaos spilling across the restaurant. The video had everything. Truth, lies, and proof. Security was called. The manager begged for calm, but by then it was too late. Justice had already been served live in real time. When I left that night, the cold air outside felt different, lighter, like the city itself was breathing for me. I thought it would take months for anyone to care. It took 8 hours. By morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop, with texts, missed calls, and hundreds of notifications. The clip Daniel posted had exploded across every platform. Hail Dinner Truth was trending in 5 cities. People were stitching, reacting, debating. Look at her face when he says, "She hid the will." This is the calmest revenge I've ever seen. Imagine erasing your own daughter and losing everything you live. By sunrise, the headline hit the news feeds. Mother denies daughter, daughter owns her. I stared at the screen, the glow lighting up the quiet of my apartment. For the first time in years, my last name didn't feel like a curse. It felt like a weapon turned back toward its owner. Courtrooms don't smell like justice. They smell like fear. The air inside the Superior Court of Seattle was thick with perfume, paper, and panic. Reporters waited outside like vultures. Camera flashes burst through the glass doors every time someone entered. The Hail vs. Hail hearing had become a spectacle, betrayal in designer heels. Elaine sat 2 rows ahead of me, her posture still perfect, her expression carved from stone. Chloe sat beside her, eyes red, hands clasped tight like a child afraid of thunder. Across the aisle, Mr. Benton adjusted his tie for the 10th time, pale and sweating. The judge entered, gavel echoing through the room like a gunshot. Court is now in session. I stood when my name was called. Nora Hale. My voice didn't shake this time. Elaine's lawyer, a man with a silver watch and no soul, began his speech. Your Honor, this supposed will was unlawfully obtained and cannot be authenticated. The estate rightfully belongs to Mrs. Elaine Hale and her younger daughter, Chloe. Younger daughter. He said it like it was a fact. Then Benton rose slowly. His hand trembled as he adjusted his glasses. Your Honor, he said, voice fragile but firm, that's not true. Every head turned. I am Mr. Hale's former legal representative, he continued, and I falsified documents under Mrs. Hale's instruction after Mr. Hale's passing. Elaine's face drained of color. What are you doing? She hissed under her breath. Benton didn't look at her. I forged Miss Nora Hale's signature on a waiver to remove her from the inheritance. I did so under threat of professional ruin, but I can no longer carry that weight. The room fell silent. The judge leaned forward. Can you verify the authenticity of the original will? Yes, Your Honor, Benton said, holding up a sealed file. This is the true will of Henry Hale, notarized and witnessed. It names Nora Hale as a 50% beneficiary of the estate, including Hale Vineyards and the family trust. Whispers broke out across the courtroom. The judge banged the gavel again. Order. Elaine's lawyer stumbled for words. This is absurd. We need time to... No, the judge interrupted. The evidence is clear. The forged document is void. The estate's assets will transfer to Miss Nora Hale immediately. My knees nearly buckled, but I didn't show it. Years of silence, erasure, humiliation, all reversed in one line of judgment. Elaine covered her mouth, shaking her head as if denial could rewrite reality. Chloe turned toward me, tears spilling freely. Please, she whispered, voice breaking, don't ruin us. I looked at her. The sister who'd stood by while I was erased. The one who clapped when Mom toasted her as her only daughter. My voice was calm, almost kind. You did that yourselves. Elaine slumped back in her chair, defeated. The ring on her finger, my father's ring, caught the courtroom light one last time before she slipped it off and set it on the table. When I walked out, reporters shouted my name, cameras flashing, questions flying. But all I heard was my father's voice from the video, echoing in my mind. If you're watching this, Nora, they already lied. Not anymore. A year later, I raised my own glass and finally it meant something. The vines outside swayed gently under the golden evening light. The Hale Vineyard, my vineyard, was alive again. The laughter that once haunted these fields had returned. Only softer now. Honest. Daniel stood by the grill with his sleeves rolled up, teasing the kitchen staff while Ava, my closest friend and new operations manager, set candles along the patio tables. No guests in glittering dresses this time. No flash photography, no lies. Just warmth, food, and people who had stayed when everything else fell apart. It was my birthday, the first one I'd ever wanted to celebrate. Ava poured me a glass of wine from our newest label, Hale Legacy Reserve. The name made me smile. You did it, she said. Your father would be proud. I glanced toward the farmhouse wall, where a small framed napkin hung behind the bia. the same one Daniel had slipped me a year ago. The ink was faint now, but the words still burned clear. Ask about Hale Legacy Trust. That single message had changed everything. Daniel came over, brushing his hands on his apron. "So," he said, grinning, "are you ready for your toast?" I lifted my glass, the vineyard lights reflecting in the wine's surface like stars caught in liquid gold. "To family," I said. "The kind we choose, not the kind we survive." They laughed and clinked glasses. For the first time, the sound of a toast didn't sting. It healed. As the night deepened, I walked alone between the rows of vines. The air smelled like rain and oak, just like it used to when Dad worked late and I'd bring him coffee. I could almost hear his voice in the wind, steady, gentle, proud. "Happiness isn't in revenge," I whispered to the dark. "It's in remembering who refused to forget you." I reached the edge of the vineyard and looked back at the glowing farmhouse. Laughter spilling out the windows, Daniel's silhouette moving inside, music low and easy. It wasn't revenge that built this life. It was true, and that truth had my name on it. I smiled, tilting my glass toward the night sky. "She once called me invisible," I said softly. "Now even her silence has my name. If you've ever been underestimated," I thought, turning back toward the lights, "your story deserves to be told."